Hey everybody, this is Jake Allwell for another money episode, and today I'm going to discuss with you the Uncommunist Manifesto by Aleks Svetski and Mark Moss. This was a great book, very quick read, less than 100 pages. You can contrast it with the Communist Manifesto, which is what they're trying to combat. The whole point of this story was they wanted to dispel the idea that individuals can be arbitrarily classified into groups and judged as such. And in the Communist Manifesto, they go a lot into, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Bourgeoisie, when I actually read the Communist Manifesto, I felt like I didn't understand a lot. And a lot of it, they're using these words that they don't really ever define. And they're using the bourgeoisie. I thought it just meant like a rich person. In the Uncommunist Manifesto, they spend, I think, 15 to 20, like the first 20 pages going through the actual definitions, because a lot of the problems people have in discussing these topics is just based on the definitions. A lot of people misuse the word capitalism and, blame things on capitalism, but they don't even really know how to describe it. Now, if you would have asked me before reading this book how I would have defined capitalism, I would have described it as the government backing off and being very weak and letting the markets take care of it. It's very dog eat dog. It looks very ruthless at times because people are losing their jobs because of this creative destruction that's happening. So the definition they use for capitalism is perhaps the most understood of all the words in this list. Capitalism is simply another word for progress, innovation, or evolution. Capitalism is not a system of rules, or politics. It is an organic process that happens in all living or complex systems. It is inherently apolitical. No body is in charge of it, nor can there be forms of political capitalism. Capitalism just is. When we subtract all of the political definitions projected on it, we find that it is simply the natural process of taking resources and turning them into something of higher order, quality, or value. All systems of rule, order, and organization, even socialism and communism, have capitalism in them. The question simply is, to what degree is this natural process allowed to occur, and to what degree does politics and the short-sighted human desire to control everything get in the way? Capitalism forcing functions are efficiency and effectiveness. Its corrective mechanism is loss, and its positive feedback loop is growth. If an economy is a complex system made up of human interactions, capitalism is the word we give to its evolutionary process. Now that's a long definition, but basically they're saying it's the natural process if markets are able to do what they naturally want to do. Now, the bourgeoisie is that term used by Marx to arbitrarily classify the group of individuals with property. They were middle to upper class, and generally the entrepreneurs, business owners, and industrials. And this is Mark Moss and Svetski's definition of bourgeoisie. Now, I think that's very important because in the Communist Manifesto, they basically want to outlaw private property. And in fact, the definition here of communism that Karl Marx himself told us that the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence: abolition of private property. And I think that is just, it really makes you think. And in this book, they talk about how your mind and your thoughts are the purest form of private property. And that's something that you really need to think about. They talk about in a dog-eat-dog capitalism environment, you really are striving for what they call dynamic inequality. You don't want static classes where people can't move up and down. And dynamic inequality means people can move up, they can move down. I mean, the fact that people can move up means that the people at the top must be able to fall. And that's kind of the dog-eat-dog style of capitalism. And I didn't know this prior to reading this, but Aleks Svetski is very big into Bitcoin. Sounds like Mark Moss is too. They see it as a way to combat central planners, and they kind of see it as the next evolution of the monetary system to combat central bankers. And it's the most capitalistic monetary idea that's really ever been around. So it could really be a game changer. Now, what they say is like the key to unlocking a very good setup, capitalistic in nature, is you have to have the preservation of private property. The same rules must apply to all participants. Thoughts and mind are primary forms of private property, number one. Number two, that which an individual creates or produces using their time, energy, or the resources they've appropriated through voluntary trade may become their private property. And it's a good thing to start thinking of your cash as your time and your energy. You put your time and your energy into creating that cash, and it should not be inflated away by central banks with a money printer or other ways of confiscation. So you should be able to keep your private property. And there's a quote in here: fix the money, fix the world. So, I mean, they also give, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but they give a lot of ideas for how we could become more capitalistic, and, abolish the central banks, preservation of private property, replace large nation states with patchwork city states that are economically accountable. And I think the idea there is that people just have more free movement to where they want to take their labor and their energy to go make money, because certain people might be better suited for different areas or different industries, which are more prevalent in certain countries. So it would be good if the, movement from place to place was not as restrictive. So that's something my brother and I have talked a lot about on our podcast. And we're going to talk about this on the Brothers on Books podcast, and it should be releasing on October 30th. So I'll eventually put a link to that in the description so you can take a listen to that full discussion where Al and I discussed this book. They talk about how Keynesian economics is taught in schools a lot, and Keynesian economics deals with a lot of models, a lot of shifting graphs, supply demand curves, saying like, okay, pollution's bad, so we should tax it this much. So the supply is, decreased by this much, and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of shifting of graphs, artificially knowing what you think is the correct amount to be producing or to be, taxing. So, and Austrian economics, in contrast, seems to be the most aligned with a capitalistic framework. And markets are not a machine that can be built or managed. Instead, they are living, organic, complex systems that self-regulate if left to run of their own accord. So, I always thought it was funny that a lot of the first assumptions in a lot of these economic models are that the people are operating rationally. And when you really start to think about that, one person's rational behavior might not be understood by someone else. And I think that can get tricky in some of these models. So Austrian economics is really like looking at, first principles, incentives of each person, and kind of looking at it as a complex system. With that, I would say this is a tremendous read. And if there's one thing I'd want you to take from this whole book, it's that definitions matter. And if someone starts bashing capitalism, it might be worthwhile asking, how are you defining capitalism? I was just at a COB workshop a couple weeks ago, and this guy started saying, capitalism is to blame for this and that. And one of the ladies actually spoke out that she said, I don't think you really mean capitalism. I think you mean just like the government. And I guess the point is, a lot of times, like, you can be talking with someone and actually you have the same enemy, and your anger or your feeling of injustice is actually targeted, or it should be targeted at the same person. And yet you might be talking past yourself just because you're not using the same definitions. So I encourage you, if you're going to use words, that you really understand what they mean. And that's my one big takeaway. So peace out, guys. I will see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe if you're finding value from this video. And if you're not finding value in this video, tell me what you think I can add, and I will talk to you later.